All right. Well, welcome everyone. Bonjour, welcome. This is Jill Dorfler. I know it takes everyone a minute or so to get connected here. We're just starting up our live feed from Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College. This is the second in the Zaagibagaang Get Involved, Get Informed Watch Party series. So as people log on from various watch parties, I know we also have people logging on at home. It's a little bit of a chilly night here at Fond du Lac, and I think around the state as well. So some of you might be logging on from home. That's great. We welcome you to join us tonight. We will go ahead and get started by showing a short video. Some of you are familiar with Zaagibagaang. You probably tuned in to our first session. But for those of you that are new, we want to take an opportunity to introduce Zaagibagaang to you by showing a short video that we made introducing ourselves. So we'll go ahead and show that, and then I'll check back in to see if all of our watch parties have gotten logged on or if we still need a couple of additional minutes. Thanks, miigwech, to everyone for bearing with us. I think we've got our sound going now. Had a little bit of a glitch. Hopefully that allowed people some time to go ahead and get logged on. So I see we have quite a few viewers. If we could have the watch parties kind of sign on, then we know everybody's here. Looks like quite a number of people are. That's perfect. So bonjour everyone, welcome. Thank you for bearing with us on the sound issue. I'm Jill Dorfler with the Zaagibagaang group. You all are tuned in to the second session of our Get Involved, Get Informed Watch Party series. It's a cold evening out there across Minnesota and here at Fond du Lac as well. So thanks to everyone for going to a watch party and or tuning in live from the warm comfort of your own home. So I think we didn't hear the sound on the video. I'm not sure if we have the capability of showing the intro video or not. I'll look for a sign from my team here. Maybe easier not to. What do you think? Just try. Yeah. We'll see. Some of you are familiar with Zaagibagaang. You might have seen our website. If not, oh, I think we'll skip that. Yeah, that's a little. We invite you to check out our website, zaagibagaang.com, where we have a bunch of informational videos, and also you could watch the introductory video that we have. But thank you. Welcome to everyone who's just getting signed on. As I said, I'm Jill Dorfler with Zaagibagaang. I'm serving as kind of the MC host for tonight. And so we have John Morrin here from Grand Portage with us. And the way our schedule will work tonight is John will present a short summary of Anishinaabe governance and the clan system and how society worked before the Minnesota Chippewa tribe. And then we'll open up the floor for questions. So then, just like we did 2 weeks ago with Sharon and Ricky, you'll be able to type your questions in, and I'll be keeping my eye on the feed on the Zaagibagaang Facebook page, and then relay questions to John. So now we'll turn over to the second stage of our set, and I'll introduce John. Okay, so miigwech, John.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for making the drive over and being here with us this evening. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and move into your presentation, and then, as I said, we can jump into questions maybe in about 20 minutes or so.
Oh, okay. Okay. Bonjour, Ginawa. Can you get you down in the cars? Magazine door dame. Zaagibagaang minwa mishpiakang Anishinaabe wa kingo jiba. So I come from, I'm enrolled in Grand Portage. My mother was enrolled. My father was from the Red Cliff. They call them reservations. I like to call them homelands. He was from the Red Cliff homeland over in Wisconsin. So that's where my roots. And of course, they're both of their roots are Lake Superior. A lot of the missionaries that came through the different areas, a lot of our people converted to Catholicism. My mother's mother was raised around the Boy Fort area, and she was raised traditional. And she became Catholic to marry my grandfather, my mother's father, around the Grand Portage area. And so, but that doesn't mean she forgot her traditional roots. And so even though she practiced Catholicism, she tried to pass on various traditional stories, Winnebujo stories, talked about how life was for thousands of years, the way our people lived, the way of life we lived. And so I would get bits and pieces as I was growing up. People would come over to our house, elders would come over, because my mother was a very social person. And she would meet people, and I'd come in from playing, and there'd be people sitting at our table, she'd be feeding them. So she began to teach me at a young age values and principles of what it meant to be, as she would tell me, a Chippewa. She didn't want to teach me our language because of her traumatic experience at Pipestone boarding school, and then the experience going to school at in Grand Marais because of a lot of the race prejudice that existed and in discrimination that is. So she never really advanced too far in, I think she made it to 7th grade, like a lot of Native people, dropped out just because of the hostile environment that they had to learn in, because of the prejudice against us as people. And so she began to teach me these values and principles of what it meant to be a Chippewa. She didn't want to teach me the language because she wanted me to succeed. We were living in South Minneapolis, and she wanted me to succeed in the English-speaking school system. She understood that a lot of the kids would make fun of my aunts and uncles when they'd go to school because of the accent, because they only spoke our language, growing up speaking our language, and it was in the boarding schools that they were forced to learn English. And so she didn't want to teach me the language, which I wish she would have understood that at the time. It would have really helped me. It would have helped me develop, at least mentally and spiritually. And but she so wanted me to succeed that she would just refer to us as Chippewa rather than Anishinaabe. But she began to teach me the values and principles of what it meant to be a human being. And that's what Anishinaabe really means, original human beings, of respect, love, truth, understanding, sharing, giving, helping. All these are values and principles that she was taught at a very young age from my grandmother, and this was our way of life. So we're studying the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe Constitution right now. We've had a couple of them, one in '36 and one revised in '64. Of course, these are documents and constitutions that have nothing to do with our culture, our way of life, who we are as Anishinaabe. It's just something our people, I believe, were just duped into accepting because once they found out that we could do things for ourselves again, that the allotment process took away from us. And so history is really important, but it's really important to understand our beginning and our roots, because I think a lot of the problems we're faced with today is because of identity. A lot of our people don't really understand what it really means to be an Anishinaabe, and it's not their fault. It's not their parents, their grandparents. There was attempts of assimilation policies in this country that forced a lot of our people to forget practicing our traditional way of life. So it's not their fault. They made choices that sometimes I think later on they wish they wouldn't have made. I think my father was an example. He grew up 6 years old, taken to a mission school in southern Wisconsin. Came home during the summer, but spent 8 years there. Came out not speaking our language anymore. Pretty much assimilated and believed that you get an education, you leave the reservation, you live in the city, you raise a family. all these things that he was being assimilated to think, you know, to think that you leave your roots, you leave your homeland where you were raised and nurtured and loved, but that's what happened to a lot of our people because of the conditions that a lot of our people faced. So I began to learn traditions and the clan system. My mother, what she understood and still remembered, would teach, but I would later learn as I began to want to learn as much. And I'll tell you can never learn enough about our way of life. There's so much that involved with it that I still feel almost many times like a baby because there's so much to learn. So I began learning and trying to learn from elders and continuing to learn what kind of way of life did we live. And as I began to learn over the years, it was such a beautiful way of life that we were given. Of course, there was the flood here on Mikanakmani, Turtle Island, because we had forgot as human beings how to walk on Mother Earth again. We forgot our way of life and how we relate to all of creation, the universe and the Creator. And so the Creator started over. And Kokamisanan was here all by herself, the grandmother of all spirits, Kokamisanan, and was lonely, so Winnebuju sent, Gijamanitu sent Winnebuju down to be with Kokamisanan. And it was Winnebuju then that would be given the responsibility after the waters receded from the flood, as he saw all the dead animals, all the life that existed before was all gone. And so he was given the responsibility to create again what we have today, the Great Lakes area, up in Canada. This is what we were told, that Winnebuju created all this, created all the animals, all the plants, the universe. And last, of course, we were created as human beings. And so that we wouldn't forget how important our relationship with the animal world is, and that we had forgotten that, how dependent we are on each other for life, to live a good life, a spiritual life, that he would create. He would create us from the female bones of the various 7 animals. And we have a chart up here of the original 7 clans that Winnebuju would blow into the bones of the Ajajuk, crane, Kigu, fish or turtle, the loon, mong, the eagle, the deer, the marten, the bear, and out of that we would come the Anishinaabe, the human beings, and so that we owe our life to the animal world, and we still use the animal world still takes care of us with food, with medicines, with clothing. So we have this spiritual relationship that, and our way of life that then we didn't know nothing. Of course, we come out as, in fact, people have taken the word Anishinaabe and broken it down to find out different parts. What is it actually saying and meaning? And some elders have said it means know nothing person. Well, obviously, we didn't know nothing when we were created, so we had to be taught. And so it was Winnebuju, Nanabuju, Manabuju that would teach us a dodeum, a way of life. We call that Mino Bima Disi Win. We live in a good way that makes us. Mino is a way, it also means to feel good. It's not just good, but it means to feel good. It's always about feeling. So we live in a way that makes us feel good about life, the sacredness of life. And so each of these clans then, we would be born into a clan. So I introduced myself, Migizi Dodem. So I was born into the Eagle clan. My mother was from the Sturgeon clan. And that was important within the whole clan system. The clans, you had to marry outside your clan to keep the blood pure. And each of these clans had responsibilities. The crane and the loon were the hereditary leaders. They call them chiefs in English, call them Ogimag. Were the hereditary leaders. They gained their leadership by hereditary, usually the oldest son. But doesn't mean, just because you inherited your leadership, didn't mean you had it forever. You had to walk the talk. as you were watched by you were recommended, you were picked by the people, and your leadership was reinforced by the people. But any time you didn't do the will of the people, you were replaced. Somebody else took. So there was accountability with leadership, and it was the clan mothers, the heads of all the clans would be the people that, of course, they'd watch children. There was their responsibility to watch children as they grew, and they watched how they related to other children, how they related to adults, how they related, how they talked, how they acted, if they helped. And they were watched their whole life, and at some point in time when leadership was needed again, somebody had to take their place as a leader, the clan mothers would come to them and say, first of all, they'd recommend them to the people, and the people, by a consensus, would agree with the clan mothers that, yes, this is who we want as a leader. And then the clan mothers would tell the person that you are now our leader, and of course, the person couldn't say no, because these clan mothers knew that probably the person better than they knew themselves, because they had watched them all. And they knew that they had the qualities as a human being to be a good leader. And leaders, all they were was spokespeople. Always, the people made the decisions. Leaders just spoke the will of the people, whether it be in meetings, within society. And so each had response. Those were the crane and the loon. And the fish clan, people from Gigu. And within the fish clan, there are sub-clans, but the major clan is the turtle. Mikanak is the head clan of the fish clan. And in fact, that's what Winnebuju stood on the back of Mikanak when he blew into the 4 directions and created all the land masses. And then, of course, blew into the bones and created us as human beings. So the fish clan, if let's say the hereditary leaders were having a hard time coming to a consensus, making a decision on behalf of the people, well, the fish clan people had qualities of coming in and being mediators. They were people that could come in at any time and take care of disputes, have people discuss things, disagree to disagree, and then eventually come to a consensus. They were also people, they were also the teachers and scholars of society, and they taught the children, they taught them how to develop good skills and healthy spirits. So they were important people in society. Makwa Dodeim, the Bear clan, these were like the police and the guardians of society and of communities. And so they would go out and they would learn all the roots and plants and the medicines. And so they would also then be the healers, the people that had that gift of healing our people when sicknesses came about. It was not them, it was their spirit helpers. We were all born with spirit helpers, and when we get our name, then we traditionally, and we'll talk about that when we talk about youth council. But the Bear were the medicine people and protectors of the community. The Martin clan were like the military. They Wabajashi Dodeim. They were the hunters, the gatherers. They were the warriors. They were like the military. They were the protectors of society. They were the protectors of the people. But that was not their sole responsibility just to fight or protect people. They also made sure that people had everything they needed. So they were almost like a role of a social worker within society. If a family or people didn't have a provider in the family, that they would go in and take care of them. That was their responsibility. And then they also defended the people in times of conflict. The Hoofed clans, and the chief clan of the Hoofed clans was the Deer, Wawajeshi. And they were people that, very gentle people, like the moose, like the caribou, like the elk. Never said harsh words to anybody. They were like the pacifist and the psychologist, poets of society. And they would also be responsible for making sure in things like housing and recreation, they would take on these responsibilities for the communities and in societies. Benes Dodeim, the bird clans, and the major clan was the bald eagle, Migizi. And they were the spiritual leaders of society. They made sure that all of the ceremonies were conducted. There was also something called protocol. Everything was done with protocol. Everything had to be done in an orderly fashion, and then the way traditionally that had been handed down for thousands and thousands of years. So there was always things done in the right way. So they had councils, they had leaders. Leaders flourished within our society, so that there were various councils that dealt with various issues, like a women's council dealt with women's issues. Men's council dealt with issues that just dealt with men. There was a youth council. Those were the young people now that had entered that time of puberty. The young boys went out and did their vision quest. The young women went out and did their purification feast, their purification rite. They'd go out and pray and fast, and they'd call on their spirit helpers to come and guide them, talk to them, give them direction, because they were entering a new time in their life. We always talk about everything is in fours, the four directions, the four ages of a human being. When we're born, abinoji, we're baby, then we become a youth, then we become an adult, and then we become an elder. And this is true of all of creation. Plants have the same 4 ages of a human. Animals have 4 ages of animals. So we're all connected. We're all connected in that way. So that they would go out and they would find their direction. So, and then those that came back would also be selected to be leaders of the youth. And so they would be on the youth council. Then, of course, most important were the elders' councils. The people that were wise, had lived a long life, had lived Mino Bima DC when a long time. And so they knew how important that that way of life was to us as Anishinaabe. And so there were various aspects that were taking place. Governance was the hereditary chiefs. Education was always educating the kids around our traditions and our culture. There was a spiritual cultural activity going on, which was our ceremonies, our sweats, an economic activity, which was a sophisticated trading system. Had nothing to do with money or any kind of currency, but it was a sophisticated trading system. And there was also a social welfare activity to make sure there was no poverty in Mino Bima Tisi when nobody went without. Everybody was taken care of. Different clans had different responsibilities in societies, and they had to work together. And there was checks and balances. The Loon clans were accountable to the Bear clan. The Crane clan was accountable to the Hoof. So there was accountability within society, accountability within the clans, within leadership, within responsibility. And all this was kept together. And what was important for this life to go on was that what it created then was equal justice within society. Everybody was treated in an equal, equitable, and just way. There was law, foremost the natural law, so that in a naming ceremony, when we get a name, about sometimes traditionally it was 4 or 5 months years old, our parents bring us to some elders, those that have that gift of giving names, and then we're given a spirit name, and then we're introduced to the community, and the community is told that this young child now, he'll be taught that natural law. In fact, this child might have to go out and take wawaskeshi to live. But this child will be taught the natural law that that child will learn to put that asema, tobacco down, and thank the Creator for putting wawaskeshi here on Oma, King Mother Earth, so that we might live this good life. And then that tobacco also honors the spirit of that wawaskeshi, the manidu of wawaskeshi, so that spirit, and thanks that spirit for allowing us to take the physical part of wawaskeshi so that we might live that good life. So we have that spiritual relationship, that natural law. We take plants we take cedar, we take sage, we put down asema. And again, to honor the spirit of that we're taking that. Now we're taking the root and actually killing this physical part of the root. But the spirit, we honor the spirit of that root. We always honor, it's all about spirit and a connection to spirit. Our spirit and all of the spirits of creation. There was order. There was order around marriage, name giving. There was order around a lot of things, customs and traditions, and there was protocols of how things were done. Ceremonies, there was protocol around ceremonies. So there was order within society that many times we hear the stereotypes that we were just wandering North America as nomads and, had no set communities, no set places. Well, no, we had order, we had villages, we had communities throughout of all North and South America. Most important, what this also did is it gave everybody voice. So everybody had a voice within a society. Everybody had a say. So what we got to do is we kind of go, we realize today, a lot of our people don't know their clan system. It's not that we can't find it. We got spiritual people today. If you give them some asema, they'll go into a ceremony. They can maybe find out what your clan was through your ancestors. So there are many ways, but we maybe can't totally go back to the clan system. But I think what we got to do is we got to take a look at how we lived for thousands of years, and maybe we can take these values and principles and incorporate them into our communities again, so that our children are learning these in our school systems and in whatever kind of educational sessions, and so that we began to understand what it really means to live as a human being here on Mother Earth, and how we're supposed to relate to each other with love, respect, kindness, sharing, giving. These are the things that I think were almost taken away from us. And I say almost because many of our people died throughout the history of this, of colonizing this continent. But our people survived, our people kept this for us. Many times when this way of life was outlawed. In fact, in 1883, they developed what was called courts of Indian offenses because of a case called Crow Dog. They were winning in district court over a murder case because the Supreme Court said that we have a right to adjudicate crime the way we did traditionally for thousands of years within our communities. In the Lakota, there was a murder, and murder was rare. So it was a family matter. And so in 1883, they developed courts of Indian offenses because they viewed Indian country as lawless. They didn't understand this type of society we had, that were producing very beautiful, loving human beings. And so in 1892, they outlawed this way of life. They outlawed our ceremonies. They outlawed our medicine people. They put language in the statute, and now that our parents and grandparents had to give up their children to these federal agents and take them to these boarding schools and mission schools. And so we have to understand that history of what was done and what was done to this beautiful society that we lived under for thousands of years. And I think once we understand these values and principles, those are still with us. There are people still trying to live this way of life. And trying to keep this way of life because they know that this is what's going to save us. This understanding of life, and not just physical life, but spiritual life, the way our people were taught, and that we got to keep remembering and reteaching each other. There's a lot. I don't know everything. There's so much I got to learn yet, but and some of you might have been taught this when you were younger, have learned this along the way, so we can keep teaching each other too, and learning as much as we can to keep this kind of way of, and this is also a way of thinking, but also through those assimilation policies, we don't think right about ourselves anymore. We don't think about our family structures, our ceremonies. We're not thinking right because of what historically has happened to us. But I really believe if we began to understand values and principles of a do-dame system, that I think this is what our people are looking for. They're looking for a good way of life. They're looking for a much better life than what we have now. And I'm not saying we have bad life. What's good about our life is our culture is still alive. This thinking, this way of life is still happening and still being preserved for us. So, and it doesn't matter what, if you belong to another denomination, it doesn't matter. I really believe I've studied a lot of religions in my life. A lot of the roots of most religions there's commonality throughout many of the religions within the world today. And so it was my understanding that we were all put here. We all understood the same thing, the four peoples of the earth, that we were put on different parts of Mother Earth. We all understand the same relationship. So with that, I think it's important, if there are any questions, we'll answer them if we can. And
good. Yeah, thank you, Miigwech John. That was excellent. This is a big, huge topic to kind of delve into and think about how Anishinaabe society worked and all of the various
Mark Rubio.
all the various complexities of the clan system and the various roles that people had, and how they supported each other also in those roles. And yeah, and so we are getting a couple of questions in the feed. One question is a little bit about checks and balances, and I think that's an important question, and we've talked about that a little bit before. Some people are just logging on. This is Zaagibagaang Watch Party with John Morrin. He's here from Grand Portage. He's been a member of Zaagibagaang since the get-go, which our group has been operating now for about 3 years.
3 years.
It's amazing. Yeah. And in our group, we've had some conversations about constitutions and thinking about how can our values and principles be applied to the Constitution today. But this question about checks and balances, I think, is great too, because when we think about this structure that we had historically, checks and balances was an important part of that structure. So you know, today, let me just take an example of Leech Lake, okay, or even White Earth, the larger reservations have various communities. And I know today they have community councils. Now the question is, are these community councils today able to hold a reservation business committee or a reservation tribal council accountable? Right.
Okay, we do know there's Article, the referendum article, I think it's Article 12 in the Constitution, where we can, there's a petition process and all that. But can we hold our leadership accountable in a more sensible way, a more not so Euro-American way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because I really believe once we understand historically our way of life, that we can figure out different ways to develop accountability within leadership. And like White Earth too has got many communities, and so it would be important for whoever gets elected, if people get elected or appointed in these various communities, that these structures then would be something that could hold whoever if there's still elected leadership or appointed leadership, if we maybe someday go back to clan mothers in our communities who have watched children and are able to recommend leadership. So there's many ways we can work, and it's something. What I really believe, it'll always be a working something in works.
Yeah.
We got to adapt to what we're faced with, and I think our people have done a pretty good job up to this time, surviving with a lot of things. But I think we can really develop something with checks and balances. You know, it's not just checks and balances of leadership, but it's checks and balances within community too, within everybody. Everybody's got to be able to hold each other accountable, families accountable on what kind of relationships we have. So yeah, checks and balances, accountability is really important. And from my understanding and listening to elders over the years, that there was a checks and balances, and there was accountability. People were held accountable for their actions or behaviors, and that's what I really believe is what we got to do today.
Yeah.
Together, and support each other, and helping each other, working toward bringing a lot more positive activity in our communities.
Well, I think that's so important. I think, as you were saying, I think in a Western kind of construct, accountability gets construed as a punitive kind of measure. Now, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, there's a punishment associated with it, and it's like maybe degrading in some way, where the way I've heard you talk about accountability tonight is it's done with our values in mind, maybe with a loving aspect in mind. And so rather than maybe accountability being thought of as sort of taking somebody down who did something wrong, we need to think about what caused that behavior and how that behavior can be improved as often through a loving and accepting structure and building that person up to be a better person.
Exactly. No, that's what my mom would tell me I was kind of an active little kid before I lost her, but she would always tell me, remind me I'm a human being, and that I'm going to make mistakes. Learn from your mistakes. If you do something that's a negative behavior, then learn to turn it around as a positive behavior. So it was about, accountability is also about behavior, and how we treat each other and how we relate to each other.
And how that's what I hear you talking about as well, is how that starts in the home, and that starts with family from the very beginning. I've heard other people talk about family is how governance sort of starts in the beginning at home, and then we build from our family into our wider community, into the governing structure. We have a couple other people jumping in here with questions. Some people would like to know a little bit more about the historic clan structure, and I think it'd be interesting to think about, one of the questions is, what in particular was the role of the Eagle clan historically? And I think that's a good question, and I would add on to that, maybe as we think about these historic roles, how do we think about how we might interpret these roles today? How they might be put into place.
So they were asking about
Eagle clan was one, yeah.
Written here. Well, the bird clans represented the spiritual leaders of the people. People of the bird clan were said to possess the characteristics of the eagle, the head of their clan. We believe that the members of the bird clan pursued the highest elevations of the mind, just as the eagle pursues the highest elevations of the sky. So they were people that did a lot of thinking, a lot of working with the spirits. And the question was about
sort of their, and then what the role was historically, but then also how do we, even for some of the other clans, if we think about some of the roles that we talked about were pretty specific, and yet how might that apply? If we look at, say, somebody else mentioned the Bear Clan, there's a lot of people that are Bear Clan, and sometimes, as you said, associated with that clan can be kind of protector type role, and so sometimes people will associate that maybe with law enforcement, but I think that could be interpreted in other ways, perhaps, but I want to let you, sort of give you the floor on that.
So we learned the different responsibilities of the various clans, and as people Some know their clan now, however they were raised or told their clan. Some can still find what their clan is, but those who know their clan, and as we learn the different responsibilities of each of the clans, then the idea is, how do you live that then?
Right, yes. How do you, every day, that's a part of your everyday. Yeah.
And because it's, they're not only physical responsibilities or natural but they're also spiritual responsibilities. So we have to be very, there's a lot of learning that's got to go on, but I really believe we can, if you take different responsibilities of these clans, that we can incorporate that into our communities. People can take on those different responsibilities. You know, it might not be exactly people from those clans, but they can learn, but they can help in the community to take on responsibilities of the various responsibilities that the original 7 clans had. Right. To keep society working in a positive way and develop in a positive way. So I think we can incorporate a lot of those historical responsibilities back into our communities, back into our homelands.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the thing is, it takes effort. It's not always an easy thing maybe to do, to take the time, or maybe to have the humility to ask somebody to learn more. You've mentioned this already, but we do have some questions coming in about how there's a lot of people who don't know their clan, and also there have been various teachings about how the clan system gets passed down. So we've had a question here about how do we find out our clan, and also clan system being passed down through the father's line or the mother's line.
Well, originally we were matriarchal, like probably still a lot of tribes today are matriarchal, but at some point in time, and you got to remember, our people were living within the Great Lakes area, but we also had relatives out on the East Coast. And so beginning in probably I'm sure it was the 1500s, going into the 1600s, probably after Jamestown, there was reports back into the interior part of Turtle Island about some folks living that had come on that part of the Turtle Island, and it was at some point in time, and this is what elders have told me, is that the women turned over all of the because the women did everything. Women did everything in society. They turned those responsibilities over to the men. And it was at that point in time, and there's never really no exact date, but at a point in time, we became patriarchal. And so that now we get our clan from our father rather than our mother. And so any person, if you hear of or learn of, or you might learn of a sweat, possibly the person conducting the sweat might be a person that would be able to find out your clan for you.
And you would just approach them with a gift of a sema?
Yes. And of course, after, give them a blanket, or, you know. But yeah, you just approach somebody who can do ceremonies, and ask them if they can find out what your clan is. And you might have to go to a number of people. You know, some people have more stronger spirit helpers, I guess, or they've learned more.
All right. So just checking in on my technical aspects here, but things are moving along pretty good for us. We've still got quite a bit of time. And another question and thought, you know, we think about historically, we had, as you pointed out, women's, men's, youth, and elders were those councils with all the clans, or were they separate, or were they both? So for example, did the Crane clan have a women's council, a men's, and an elders, or were those bringing the clans together, or is it both? And these things have changed over time, like you noted with the way in which the clan system works. So our systems have always been dynamic, and they will continue to be dynamic. But from what you know, do you know how those?
So there were leaders of the clans, and these were various councils that existed within all of society. Within, it could have been in each clan. There were councils within each clan.
Right.
Odeum system.
Okay. I'm trying to find our new video so I can see new questions, and we'll see if I can find it here. I don't think so. Nope. Not really. But we can go on with our own questions, and I'll try to, maybe I'll try to revive this iPad that died and see if that's a little more effective. But as we think about the historic structure, I notice across the bottom here you have also a number of kind of principles written in red down here: equal justice, law, order, and voice. And I think all of these are important, but I think perhaps voice is really important as we think about if the Minnesota Chippewa tribe creates a new document, how might people participate, as well as what voice might look like in that document and inclusion.
See, today, like I said before, today they have community councils. So like, and these, how these people are picked, if they're elected, I think probably today they're elected by the various communities. They become the voice of the people, but they're always in communication with the people. You know, they don't just get appointed, elected, and then they have no more further connection to the people. They're always connected to the people. And each leader had to have a spiritual advisor. So once you got appointed or picked as a leader, then you also had to go and pick a spiritual advisor. I think sometimes in treaties they might have been called, they called them headmen. Sure, yes. They were the advisors to the leaders. Every leader had to have a.
Or would it be Oshkabewis? Or no?
Yeah. Oshkabewe, that's a speaker.
Okay.
But yes, they could also speak for the leader. Yeah. Oshkabewis.
Thank you.
I'm trying to get
little, still learning, right? Oshkabewe, little could use a little work. All right. So
let's say there was a big issue and there was a meeting, so that, you know, certainly you'd have the hereditary leaders sitting in the middle. And of course you'd have all the leaders of the clans and their advisors. You'd have people, they'd call them the ayers. They were people that just observed and watched. They watched the leaders, how they spoke, how they gestured. They were there to watch how leadership conducted themselves, not what they said, but how physically they moved around. And then, of course, were the people holding all of the leaders inside, making decisions accountable. So that's what we mean by the people always are holding people accountable, leadership accountable. And I still think we can have that type of system. How we write that on a piece of paper, I don't know. If we can, but have that type of system again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think writing it is part of it. Any constitution and document, it's a living entity in and of itself. And really, I think many people would say that document is only as strong as the people behind it and the people carrying it forward and through. And so I think that's where some of your point comes in, is like there'll be a way to write things to provide some accountability measures that are sort of step A, B, C, which is the way a document is written. But in order for that to be effective, the people have to be involved. And I think what I hear when I hear that description is I think of all the responsibility that the people carry.
That's right.
And I think sometimes today it can be easy to think you're going to go on voting day, you're going to send your ballot in or stop by and make your mark, and then your job is done. But
now it's up to them 5 people.
Now it's up to them to sort of figure out these problems and fix it the way you think it should be fixed. But when we look at and think about how it worked in the past, is the people must be very involved. And so you have to be willing to devote time and effort to having an understanding and participating.
And especially this whole system gets you to think in a collective. You know, whereas the United States were conditioned and socialized to think as an individual, which probably goes against, I would say, I'm just using the term people of color in this country, goes against their culture totally.
Right.
It just does not work. Does not work.
Yeah, and we see, I think we see a lot of effects from the kind of colonial government, which creates a system of dependency.
That's right.
And a feeling in people that they maybe deserve to get something, whereas the way I hear you talking about our historic structures is everybody has a responsibility to contribute something.
Right. There's no entitlement. Unless you couldn't fare for yourself, you know, and then you'd be taken care of.
Yeah, but if you think of some of the things we've talked about before too, the idea that everyone can make a contribution through their gifts, and that might be very different ways that people can assist in making contributions, and that diversity helps the community, the clan, the nation be stronger by people contributing what they can according to following their path in life and developing their gifts, and therefore then working on sharing those gifts in order to make a contribution.
I guess that was so important about, that's what was so important about the vision quest and the purification rite, is that that's when the young people went out and tried to find their gifts. Or their spirit helpers would help them discover their gifts as a human being, and then those were the gifts that they would use to contribute to society, to make sure that Mino Bimati Siwan was kept in place.
Yeah.
It's like all these activities, they had to be working. If one of these were out of sync, it would cause a disruption within the society. So they had to work together. All these different activities had to be working in sync. For the whole society to work like it did, like it does.
Yeah.
Could.
Will. Excellent. So also when we think about governing bodies and our values, and looking back here to this structure of consensus, I think there can be a kind of maybe idealism around consensus, when consensus is a really challenging task. And my understanding of consensus connects to a lot of compromise, and it also connects to people being willing to sort of maybe let some of their personal interests step aside and thinking about the society, the family, the nation as a whole. How do you agree with that?
Well, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, consensus comes about because of the emphasis on the collective, not the individual. If we're stuck on the individual, of course we're going to disagree. We're going to argue. We can argue for days, I suppose. But
Right.
if you're always thinking of the collective, and you still can have differences of opinions, but somebody's always going to keep you thinking, how is this going to affect the collective?
Yeah.
Whatever we decide, whatever decision we come to, whatever decision we can agree on, be of one mind. Because see, then if you vote, somebody loses.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you can work toward a consensus and everybody wins, because you all agree, and you all support that decision. That's powerful. That's a powerful way to make decisions especially for people.
Yeah.
Decisions that are going to have effect on people's lives. So. 7 o'clock.
Yeah. So I think we'll. I don't know what's going on, but I don't see any
more
questions, or I'm not sure. I could. Maybe we'll wrap up with some final thoughts around. You're a delegate as a part of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe reform process going on right now, and there are delegates from reservations, all of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe reservations, and some of them have tuned in. And one of the things that we talked a little bit about last time was maybe advice or thoughts for your fellow delegates as we think about how this process is going to move forward.
Well, it's going to take a lot of discussing, a lot of talking, a lot of sharing, a lot of learning. That's the way I kind of look at it. Is it's really the beginnings of a learning process of working toward our ability to do things for ourselves without any. I mean, you can look at other structures. You can even look at other thinking, but you really have to take a look at how that thinking really works with the way we're trying to think, or the way our ancestors thought for thousands of years. But I
So it'll be, I think, a challenge and an opportunity as the process moves forward to think about how the core values and teachings, which we talked about in the last session, as well as how the clan system and structure of interdependency as well as individual contributions will guide the process as it moves forward. And we appreciate everyone for logging on and joining us tonight and bearing through some technical difficulties. It takes a lot of moving parts to get this organized, and sometimes even when something worked well last time, it has a glitch this time. So we'll continue to work on our process. We'll be live again on February 7th. At that time, we'll have Elaine Fleming and Rose Robinson from Leech Lake. They will be our guests, and they're going to be talking a little bit more about sovereignty. That will be at 6 p.m. February 7th. In the meanwhile, if you want to learn more, check out our website at zaagibagaang.com. I mentioned we have a number of videos there. We have John talking about the clan system there, a presentation that we recorded of him a couple of years ago over at a meeting at Grand Rapids, and also lots of resources on our history and values and contemporary toolkit for constitutional reform as well. So miigwech everyone for watching and participating, and Stay warm out there till next time. Gigawabamin.